Our first speaker this afternoon is Elise Mitchell. She's the CEO of Mitchell Communications Group and Dentsu Aegis PR. She's a member of the ICCO board. She also sits on the PR Council board in the US. Elise doesn't hang around. She built Mitchell Comms into a top 10 fastest growing global firm with 500% fee growth in 5 years. So it's not surprising she's going to talk to us about how smart risks drive business growth, although I'm not entirely sure how risk averse she is, because she also is a big motorcyclist, which scares the death out of me. So thank you very much, and Elise.
So people often ask me, do you really ride a motorcycle? And I do. There is a picture of my bike in the back there. It's a Kawasaki Ninja. It's red and it's fast, and that's probably all you really need to know. But it does, I guess, qualify me a bit as someone who takes risk, who likes to talk about risk. But I think I am in a room of risk takers, because many, many of you are entrepreneurs, and you have built your own companies, and you live and breathe risk every single day like I do. And I have learned a lot about building a company and building my own company from riding a motorcycle. And it's a fascinating sport. Are there any motorcycle riders in the audience? Okay, all right, there's a few, good. Well, then some of the principles of motorcycling I'm going to talk about today will resonate with you. For those who are just learning about motorcycling, it is a fascinating sport because it combines two really unique things. You have to be able to adapt and respond to sometimes very significant risk, but you also have to focus and be very clear-headed about your riding. Because most of the time you're going 60 miles an hour down the highway and there's just a few inches between you and pavement. And that makes you focus quite a bit. But it's not just about speed that risk is involved in motorcycling. One of the biggest risks you face with your bike is learning how to navigate it, how to take it through turns. And there's a real art to doing this, and it's quite different from driving a car. So the first thing you do is you start by what we call looking through the turn, which is as you approach a turn, you keep your eyes focused on where you want to end up instead of fixating and looking straight into the turn. But that helps you lean the bike and guide the bike to where you want to go. So the second part of that is what I just alluded to, is the leaning and the turning. And you do something when you approach a turn that seems very counterintuitive. As you approach a turn, you actually turn the bike in the opposite direction of the way you want to go. And then you lean your bike, and it actually takes you in the direction of the turn. This is something that we call counter steering. So that's where I get the title for my presentation. Think steer left to turn right. Seems very odd. But to me, I think it is a beautiful inspiration for the concept of innovation, which seems very risky to do, but yet it is the way forward in your business. So we all know that innovation is a critical skill in today's business environment, and you are being asked to think about the future. Remember, today we've talked quite a bit how our agencies are changing, the different types of skill sets that are required for us to have a very successful agency. And if you are not innovating, you risk falling behind. And I think this is the worst risk of all. If I can't keep up with how the industry is evolving, my agency will be left behind, and I can't allow that to happen. So innovation definitely takes you into the future. It helps your company remain relevant, and it keeps you in the game. But it is also a little bit confusing and overwhelming, and there are a lot of reasons why people don't like to innovate. And we make all these excuses up in our mind. Anytime I think about, am I going to take this risk to innovate, I say, well, I don't have the time. I don't have the money because I'm too busy building the business that I already have. I can't think about what's coming. I have to deal with what's happening right now. Insular thinking is when we only think about what we know. In the PR industry, we only talk to ourselves. Maybe we don't get out enough. We don't see different things. I loved how Fred was telling us about the internship and that people went out into different types of life experiences. That teaches you to think very differently than what you're accustomed to. Arrogance is when we in the agency world say, We don't need to listen to what our clients are telling us. We know best what they need. So therefore, they need to buy the products and services that we already offer instead of having the humility to be true listeners and learners to what our clients say they need. A commitment to the past. We probably, those of us who have employees that have been with us a very long time, you risk having employees who say, I don't want to change. I don't want to take on all of these new skill sets. I liked it the way it was in the good old days. And so they want to kind of pull you back from evolving. And then fear of failing is just an obvious. I mean, nobody likes to fail. But failure is inherent in innovation. And you have to wrap your mind around the fact that you will encounter failures as you try to learn and innovate. But innovation is absolutely essential. It ensures that you can continue to evolve as everything around you is changing. And some people are put off by innovation because they think, this is too hard, it's too complex, it's too expensive, all of the reasons that I just gave you. It seems daunting and complex. But at its very core, innovation is simply about turning ideas into money. Innovation is simply about turning ideas into money. So for most of us, the easy part is coming up with lots and lots of ideas, right? I can think of tons of things that I would like to try to do. But the hard part is figuring out which ones to focus on and how to make the right ideas come to life. So in order to do that, you need to do two very simple things effectively. The first is your mind. You got to get your mind right. If you're the leader of your agency, and I think all of you are leading in some capacity at your firm, then you are in charge of driving innovation. It is not somebody else's job. You have to set the tone from the top. And I always think to myself, as a CEO, I remember that to think about what is possible, not what is. If I'm so focused on what is, I can't see what's ahead for the future. So I need to think about what's possible, not what is. And if we get too pulled into the business, I'm too busy to look over for the next horizon. Better leaders also learn to see things from a broad point of view. They invite diverse thinking into the conversation. And I think this is actually quite hard. It's very similar to insular thinking. I love this quote by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Be willing to consider ideas that are different from your own. The mark of a superior intellect is to hold two conflicting thoughts at the same time and not be paralyzed. This is tension, right? Creative and intellectual tension, where you're listening to two sides of the argument always, and you're trying to discern the right way forward. But I love this because it challenges what you are accepting currently and forces you to think about the future. The other thing is to try to look to other industries for inspiration. I have a very good friend, and she really is disrupting the healthcare industry. And I was interviewing her for this presentation and asking her, how have you done what you've done? Because she's a lawyer by trade, and she has built from scratch a disruptive healthcare company. I said, Kara, how did you do this? And she said, well, you know, a lot of innovation isn't radically new thinking. It's taking good ideas from other industries and applying them where you are. So she began to give me all these different stories of how she'd been doing that. And I thought, I love this. It's the same idea of fresh perspectives. So what's the application for us in our agencies? I call this the wisdom of objective thinkers, which to me is the talent that you can hire from outside the industry and bring into your agency. Now, how many of you have hired people from very different agencies outside of the PR world? Okay, so yes, many hands rising up. I think this is one of the trends that is helping us evolve our businesses, is to hire people that are actually very different than we are to bring us fresh perspective and to give us this objective point of view, like that doesn't make any sense. Why would we do that? And we might say, well, because that's the way we've always done it in PR. And they would say, that's not a good way forward. Let's try something really different. So I do think there's great value in us bringing in talent from other types of industries when it makes sense to do so. The next thing you need besides an innovation mindset is a process. And to me, this is right at the heart of practical innovation. Like, how am I supposed to innovate? I went to an innovation summit with our network for a bunch of the CEOs of the brands last year, and we all sat in the room going, why are we here? We have work to do. You know, we need to be focused on the revenue, not trying to think about innovation. And by the end of the summit, we were all so excited to think about innovation because we learned specific processes for how to do it, practically speaking. And those are some of the things I want to share with you today. I think it's key to understand I may not know what the right idea is, but I know how to get to the right idea. And the right process will make that happen for you. First tip here, I don't know if you've learned about the sort of leadership style of asking questions of your staff instead of telling them what to do. And I've had some recent training on that. I think it's really valuable to stop and ask them the question. But you need to ask the right questions. And so they say when you start innovation, you ask the question, how might we together solve this problem? And so it opens up the audience to thinking very freely and very brightly about what possibilities are. So I love that idea. The second point I want to share with you here is I want to challenge you to innovate around the how of your business and not necessarily the what. Because not every innovation is a new product or service. Frankly speaking, it might be innovating how you run your company, or how you price, or how you structure your teams. So look innovatively and honestly at your business model and see what could be changed there, rather than just trying to look for the new bells and whistles that you could sell. I also want to share with you something that you're probably familiar with. It is created by the Design Council, and it's called the Double Diamond Model. And it's really very simple in its thinking, but it's 2 diamonds that kind of lead you through the innovation process. You start like what the creative brief might be on the far left, and you take your team through a very open process of discovery. You know, what's this going to be about? What are we trying to solve for? How's this going to work? And then you close it back again to define what the challenge and the opportunity is. Then you go back out again for the development, which is, okay, here's 100 ways we could skin this cat. You know, these are all the different things we could try. And different models and different ideas, all the creative brainstorming goes on during development. And then deliver is deciding, here's the 3 ideas we're going to pitch, or here's the 2 campaigns to take to the client to choose from. And the hardest part, as the leader of the innovation process, which you are, the hardest part is getting your teams to turn the corner. Because don't you love brainstorming in the discovery phase and brainstorming in the development phase? But don't make me decide. If I had just another week, I'd have 20 more good ideas. But as a leader, you have to bring that creative tension to a close and deliver a result. Or you're back to the point of you don't have a process that works because you can't get anything across the finish line. So look this model up. There's tons written about it on the web, but it's a great process for you to try working with your teams to take them through a process. A couple of more ideas for you. I love this concept about labs, accelerators, and startups. I would urge you, I have done this before and I love it, is to mentor startups. Get involved in entrepreneurial centers, incubators, virtual or investment firms that are investing in different startup groups. Get involved with them, and because just simply being around entrepreneurs who are thinking brightly and differently will inspire you. And I learn from them. It's like reverse mentoring. You know, you're there to teach them how to build a business, but they're teaching you how to think differently about ideas. So I love that idea. And then test and learn, which is a really simple process and approach to innovation that is very different than the funnel model that we often have taught ourselves, which is I'm going to have all these different ideas and they're going to come together and then I'm going to develop one to deliver. Test and learn means piloting in parallel. It's picking 2, 3, or 4 things to test and learn and modify as you go and see which one comes across the finish line. It's a much more efficient way to innovate and continue to keep good ideas flowing. Now, unfortunately, a lot of leaders don't like to innovate because they are afraid of failure, They don't think they can read the tea leaves very well. They lack a bit of confidence about what to invest in. And so I want to give you just a couple of quick innovation essentials that will help you get your innovation game where you want it to be. The first is to learn to read the road signs. So obviously another inspiration from motorcycling is really getting good at looking at the horizon around you and figuring out what's going on the fly. So I am paying attention to trends. I'm learning to anticipate change, which is, of course, very hard to do, but there are ways that you can be more adept at anticipating change. You can listen better to people around you. One of the things here that I like, an idea I heard at a conference about a year ago, was if you listen to people who are the outliers, you'll begin to pick up on an emerging trend. And somebody said, try hiring a 15-year-old for 2 hours every other week to teach them anything they want to teach you. And that will really open up your eyes about what is happening with the younger generation. You know, what are your kids thinking about, or your parents, your friends' kids? What are they into these days? Because they're going to be the consumers of the future. What are they into and why? Might have given you some early indications about things like Airbnb and Uber. When I'm watching the road signs, I'm also really good at seeing the need around me. And I'm paying attention to what others are telling me, even if I don't want to hear it. So one of my favorite sayings that came out of this innovation summit, the facilitator said to us, obnoxious clients give you the future. And we all laughed because we're like, we don't have any obnoxious clients. But I knew what he meant. What she was saying, clients who challenge you make you better, because they force you to evolve and develop new ideas. So listen to the clients who are needing you the most, because maybe they're saying, you're not meeting my needs. You need to develop a new capability or expertise. And then you just need to practice at it. If you are so busy working in the business, I promise you, you're not working on it. And you have to practice lifting your head up from your desk and looking at the world around you. Competitors, prospects, clients, the industry, other industries, you just have to practice at getting good at this. The next thought is to stay loose. And this one I like because I got to thinking to myself, when I have something that competes with me, or I'm threatened by something, what is our first tendency to do? Is to stiff arm it, right? To rationalize it and tell ourselves the threat does not exist. But the way I want you to think differently about threats is to instead look at them and see if there's a way to leverage them. Is there a partnership I can create with this competitor? Should I buy this competitor? Well, what can I do to pull myself together with something that is coming at breakneck speed into my industry? It is far better to do that than to pretend like the threat doesn't exist. That's foolish. So my thinking there is stay loose, go with it as it comes, and try to figure out a way to ride the wave. The third tip on taking smart risk is don't say yes to everything. And for those of us who are entrepreneurs, this is the hardest one because I can think of 100 ideas, the things I'd like to try, and most of them should never see the light of day because nobody's going to pay me for them, they're too hard to do, I don't have credibility in the space. There's a lot of reasons why good ideas won't work. But if you learn to say yes to the best things that you have a much greater chance of success that goes a lot deeper and is more sustainable. So I like to think of this as just focus where you have the greatest opportunity, because if we say yes to too many things, what happens? We get very spread out, very thin, and then nothing really has a chance to go. You must also learn to understand your value proposition. And this is what I was alluding to just a minute ago. I want you to learn to ask yourself or develop a checklist of questions. Here are 5 that I use when I'm thinking about things for our firm. You can develop your own list, put any questions on you want there. But I want you to have the rigor to ask yourself these questions, which is there a market for it? You know, are people like really spending money here? I think we have so many startups in the world today where people have come up with these, what they think are great ideas, but nobody's going to spend any money on that. They need you to be able to know if there's a chance to really develop budgets around this idea. Will somebody buy this from you? Speaks to your credibility. Are you seen as credible in the marketplace? Can you make money, of course, and we'll talk about that in just a second. Can you deliver on the promise? And is it a strategic fit? And the last one is important because if you get involved in too many other things beyond your core competency as an agency, your clients get confused. They don't know anymore what you really are. And so while we all might want to strive to be more integrated services firms, don't try to position yourself as too many different things or you lose some sort of expertise in the marketplace. Determine an innovation budget. And here I want to talk to you for just a moment about finance. And it's probably not your favorite subject, but I'm going to preach a little bit about this because you have to get to the basics of finance in running your company. Too many of us are not making enough margin and not making enough profit, which then forces us to not be able to reinvest in the business or pay our people what we should be paying them. Finance is crucial to your long-term success, and you need to get good at it. I remember the year that I sort of decided I've got to figure out this finance thing. I had a controller at the time, but our agency was growing so fast, I was losing track of what was going on with our business, where it was going out, where it was coming in. Were we actually being very profitable in certain types of client bases? I didn't know those things. So I really applied myself to finance. And one of the things I did is I hired my CPA to give me a half-day crash course at my kitchen table. And I said, you just need to tell me everything I'm supposed to know as a CEO to run a business that's changing dramatically. And he got me started down the path of learning about finance, and I got very hungry for the topic. There's a book here that you can buy off the internet, and I will give you a warning, it's more of a textbook, but I loved it because it dug deeply into the details of finance. It's called Finance for Executives, Managing for Value Creation, and it is absolutely terrific because it teaches you what is the best use of your money. If I gave you $100,000, and I told you, how would you invest this to drive business and revenue for your agency? How would you spend it? How would you spend it? It's a good, exercise to go through in your brain. Would I invest it in technology or talent or both? And how would I make sure I not only got my money back, but I got a profit as well? And this is something that I might be able to build over time. And then, of course, the last point there is you're going to have the courage to pull the trigger. When you come up with good ideas and you think you have a decent shot to make money at it, you're going to have to jump off that cliff. And that's really difficult to do. The last tip is exactly this point. You have to get good at creating a culture of try. And I call it that because I keep reminding myself, wow, we're so big on culture at Mitchell and all these values we have, but have I truly created a culture of try? Where people are not afraid to bring ideas forward, even if they don't work. How do I do that? Well, there's a couple of ways. The first is, and I want you to look this up, this is great reading, adaptive leadership. If you haven't heard much about it, you can read about it in any of the business journals, but adaptive leadership is absolutely essential because it's leadership through times of change, and it's being agile enough to innovate in real time. And of course, the idea is, in the old days, we planned for change, we did research on change, we lined up constituents to advocate for change, and you would kind of go through this linear process. And now, change happens, and you got to figure it out right now. And that's what adaptive leadership it is. It's keeping your cool under pressure and helping your teams figure out solutions to what's going on around them. I have this paperweight. I absolutely love this paperweight. I keep it in my office in New York. It says, don't be afraid to fail. Be afraid not to try. And whenever I read it, I remind myself, be bold, Elise. Have courage. Don't be afraid to fail at some of the things you'll try, because sure enough, we have failed at some of the things we've tried. And as crazy as that makes me, I did learn something, and it made me smarter next time around with what we were doing. You could create a greenhouse environment in your agency by getting groups together to think about ideas or to tackle special problems. I really believe that these are some of the core things about what makes working in an agency really fun. Because I promise you, your employees, they love having that let's do it mentality. You know, sometimes we'll say, screw it, let's do it, because we want to say to people, okay, come on now, we got to run into the heat of battle. Don't be timid in what we're trying to solve for. Take a chance every now and then. And you see employees really rise up to that when you as a leader give them opportunity to try brave new thinking. And the last one is to be sure to praise the effort as much as the win. We actually have a client in the energy industry, and they have a Best Try annual award, which I love that, because typically in a performance culture, you know, who made the most money and what biggest clients did somebody win, but who's awarding for the best try? Because when you praise your people, you know how that goes. That reinforces their behavior to do the same thing again. So if you are standing in front of the room and you're praising somebody for the best try, people are going to think, well, I need to do that. I want a chance to be recognized. Even if I'm not working on the biggest account, how can I be publicly recognized by my peers? This is a way to do it. And in closing, I just want to ask you to connect with me, because I love sharing ideas about innovation. What's working for you at your agency? I also have a tips sheet on taking smart risks that you can download by going to our agency website, which is mitchcomgroup.com. You can just look it up on the website, Mitchell Communications Group. Go to our blog. I have a blog post there today that has a link to this downloadable tips that you can take away from the presentation today. And most of all, I just want to have the conversation going with you so we can continue to learn from each other. Thank you very much.